Dear Lord, please bless this jollof rice and forgive Emeka for his sins. Chidima, please. Don't stop me now. I'm just getting to the amen.
Abeg, is God going to fix your calculator watch too? Faith and reason don't mix, my sister.
Every single time. Every meal, every stress, every small wahala, na only prayer. Won't you just relax and enjoy your 20s? Auntie Maria, the missionary. I'll see you all later. Don't be like that now. We're only joking.
Maria pauses at the doorway for 1 second, back straight, shoulders set. Then she steps out into the night. The door clicks shut behind her. To understand this night, we have to go back 3 years, to the beginning of everything. 3 years earlier, 5 strangers arrived at the same university hostel corridor, dragging suitcases and nerves into a new chapter of their lives. Maria was the first to introduce herself, offering a shy smile and a plate of biscuits to anyone who passed her open door. Chidinma arrived loud and confident, already treating the corridor like her personal stage, cracking jokes before she'd even unpacked her bags. Emeka moved in quietly, a stack of textbooks under one arm, already debating a lecturer's opinion with anyone who'd listen. Uzo settled in without much fuss, easygoing, the kind of person who got along with everybody without ever taking a side. Blessing followed Chidinma everywhere from day one, laughing at her jokes before they'd even landed, eager to belong to someone louder than herself. By the end of orientation week, the 5 of them had become inseparable, bonded over shared classes, shared stress, and shared instant noodles. Maria's faith was quiet from the start. She kept a small Bible on her desk, prayed before meals, and never missed a Sunday service, rain or shine. She never once asked the others to join her or made them feel judged for skipping church. Her faith lived in her actions, not her arguments. One Friday night, the group planned a party. Maria declined gently, saying she had church commitments the next morning. Boring guy, Chidinma teased, but it was light then, harmless, the kind of joke that made everyone laugh without anyone getting hurt. Emeka's worldview crystallized early in philosophy class, where he thrived on logic, evidence, and argument. Faith to him was an unexamined comfort blanket. He once challenged a guest preacher on campus with a barrage of questions about suffering and proof, walking away certain he'd won. Uzo watched these debates from the sidelines, uncertain where he stood, more interested in keeping the peace than picking a side. Blessing rarely voiced an opinion of her own. Whatever Chidinma found funny, she found funny. Whatever Chidinma dismissed, she dismissed too. Despite the differences, the friend group thrived. They studied together, ate together, celebrated birthdays together in the cramped hostel common room. Maria's small kindnesses became a quiet thread running through their friendship. She was the one who noticed when someone skipped meals during exam week. When Emeka came down with malaria in 2nd year, it was Maria who sat up with him overnight, cooling his forehead with a wet cloth. When Chidinma failed a course and spiraled into panic, Maria was the one who sat with her until 3 a.m., breaking down formulas she barely understood herself. Nobody ever thanked her loudly. Her help was simply expected, absorbed into the group like something that had always been there. By 2nd year, the jokes about her faith had become more frequent, though still mostly gentle, still mostly laughed off by everyone, including Maria. Maria will pray about it became a running phrase in the group, said whenever someone faced a problem they didn't want to deal with. At first, Maria laughed along too, understanding it as harmless ribbing between close friends who meant no real harm. But slowly the tone began to shift. The jokes grew sharper, landing less like affection and more like a performance for laughs at her expense. Chidinma, ever the center of attention, discovered that mocking Maria's faith reliably got a reaction from the room. Laughter, attention, approval. She leaned into it more and more, not out of any real malice at first, but because it worked, and because nobody ever told her to stop. Emeka's jabs grew more pointed too, no longer just intellectual sparring but genuine mockery dressed up as debate. Uzo noticed the shift but said nothing, telling himself it wasn't his place to interfere in dynamics that predated his opinion. Blessing's silence calcified into complicity. She never mocked Maria directly, but she never once told Chidinma to stop either. Maria noticed the change too. She noticed and she said nothing, choosing instead to keep showing up for people who increasingly laughed at her. Some nights, alone in her room, she wondered if something was wrong with her for staying quiet, for not defending herself. But she had been raised to believe that faith was proven in patience, not in arguments won. So she prayed, and she stayed. By the start of final year, the five of them were still, on paper, best friends, bound by history, habit, and something none of them could quite name. Final year brought heavier workloads, higher stakes, and shorter tempers, and with it, the group's dynamic sharpened into something more brittle. One afternoon, Maria bowed her head briefly to pray over a plate of food at a crowded campus cafeteria table. Chidinma pulled out her phone and recorded it, laughing as she typed a caption for her group chat with mutual friends. Maria opened her eyes to find several strangers at nearby tables glancing over, whispering, some smiling with quiet pity. She said nothing to Chidinma about the video, though the humiliation sat heavy in her chest for the rest of the day. During a late-night study session, Emeka turned the group's shared table into a stage for a pointed debate. "Show me one piece of evidence," he said, leaning back with a smug smile, "that prayer has ever changed a single outcome in the real world." Maria kept her eyes on her notes. "I'm not trying to convince you, Emeka. My faith isn't a debate I need to win." "Convenient," Emeka said, smirking at Chidinma, who laughed and mimed a slow clap. "Every argument, she just retreats into its personal, real solid logic." Uzo shifted in his seat, uncomfortable, opening his mouth once to speak before closing it again and returning to his notes. Despite the mockery, Maria's help never wavered. That same week, Chidinma faced a resid exam that would determine whether she graduated on time. Maria stayed up 3 consecutive nights, breaking down the entire syllabus into simple notes, quizzing Chidinma until midnight each time. Chidinma passed the resit by a narrow margin. She thanked Maria briefly, almost embarrassed, before the conversation moved quickly to something else. Around the same time, Emeka received a call that his younger sister needed emergency medical funds his family didn't have. He mentioned it once in passing to the group, his voice tight with the worry he tried to bury under humor. Later that night, Maria transferred money to his account without a word, asking only that he not mention it to the others. Emeka never told anyone, but he stared at his phone for a long time that night, something uneasy shifting quietly in his chest. Uzo began to notice the pattern more clearly now. The person they mocked most was the person holding the group together. He almost said something to Chidinma one evening, the words forming, but he swallowed them back down, unwilling to disrupt the group's easy rhythm. As final semester wore on, exhaustion frayed everyone's patience, and the jokes about Maria's faith grew more frequent, less affectionate. "Maria, pray for better Wi-Fi," Chidinma would say when the hostel router failed. "Maria, pray for the lecturer to postpone," Emeka would add, and the group would laugh. Maria's smile in these moments grew thinner each time, though she never let it fully disappear, never gave them the reaction they seemed to want. One evening, planning began for an end-of-semester trip. A final send-off before graduation scattered them across different cities and countries. Chidinma proposed a resort town 6 hours away, known for its lakeside views and cheap lodges perfect for a group of broke students. Emeka and Uzo agreed immediately, already calculating shared transport costs. Blessing nodded along, as always, to whatever Chidinma decided. "Should we even invite Maria?" Blessing asked quietly, almost as an afterthought, once the plans were mostly settled. Chidinma shrugged. "I mean, we can't just leave her out. She'll probably say no anyway, church and all that." That same week, a house party filled a small off-campus living room, music pulsing, cups passed hand to hand. Chidinma stood on a low table filming the room, shouting for someone to say something for the vlog. Emeka leaned against the wall, telling Uzo this was what final year should feel like. Blessing whispered to Chidinma as Maria quietly bowed her head over her food in the kitchen.
Dear Lord, please bless this jollof rice and forgive Emeka for his sins. Chidinma, please. Don't stop me now. I'm just getting to the amen.
Abeg, is God going to fix your calculator watch too? Faith and reason don't mix, my sister.
Every single time. Every meal, every stress, every small wahala, na only prayer. Won't you just relax and enjoy your 20s? Auntie Maria, the missionary. I'll see you all later. Don't be like that now. We're only joking.
The invitation came to Maria 2 days after everyone else's, delivered casually by Uzo in a hallway between classes. Maria felt the sting of being an afterthought, but she said yes anyway, some part of her still hoping the trip might mend something. She prayed about it that night, asking for patience, for the strength to keep loving people who had grown careless with her feelings. In the days leading up to the trip, the mockery continued in small doses. Jokes about packing a Bible instead of a swimsuit, about her missing sinning hours at the lake. Maria laughed along thinly each time, unwilling to let them see how much the accumulated weight of 3 years had begun to press on her. The night before departure, she packed her bag carefully, tucking a small travel Bible into the side pocket, out of habit rather than performance. She did not know yet that this trip would become the single most defining moment of all their lives. Emeka spent that same night reviewing directions, confident and prepared, the way he approached everything, with logic, with a plan, with certainty. Chidinma stayed up late curating a road trip playlist, eager for the group to have one last unforgettable send-off before graduation split them apart. Uzo packed lightly, looking forward mostly to a few days away from deadlines, professors, and the low hum of anxiety that had defined final year. Blessing helped Chidinma pack, still orbiting her best friend's excitement, still following wherever the group's energy led. None of them noticed the small, quiet moment Maria took that night, kneeling beside her bed, praying simply for safety on the road ahead. Morning came bright and busy, 5 bags loaded into Emeka's car, snacks bought in bulk, music already blasting from the speakers. Everyone buckle up and pray for safe travels, Chidinma said with a grin, glancing at Maria in the rearview mirror. Oh wait, that's your department. The group laughed. Maria managed a small smile and looked out the window as the university gates shrank behind them. The first 2 hours passed easily, filled with music, old memories, and the particular joy of 5 friends on the open road. Around midday, road signs indicated construction ahead, forcing Emeka to take an unfamiliar detour recommended by a fuel station attendant. The new route wound through less populated terrain, narrower roads flanked by dense trees, phone signal flickering in and out. Chidinma made a joke about horror movies starting exactly this way. Nobody laughed as hard as she expected. By late afternoon, dark clouds gathered unexpectedly, and rain began to fall in heavy, relentless sheets across the isolated road. Visibility dropped fast. Emeka gripped the wheel tighter, leaning forward, his earlier confidence replaced by quiet concentration. "We should stop somewhere," Uzo said, voice tense, scanning the empty road ahead for any sign of shelter or civilization. Before anyone could answer, the engine sputtered, coughed, and died, the car rolling to a slow stop on the flooding shoulder of the road. Silence swallowed the car except for rain hammering the roof. Emeka turned the key again and again, but the engine refused to catch. No, Emeka muttered, hitting the wheel. Not now, not here. Chidinma leaned forward. What do you mean it's not starting? I mean it's not starting, Emeka snapped, panic edging into his voice for the first time any of them had heard. Uzo checked his phone. No signal, nothing, not even one bar. Blessing's voice trembled. So what do we do now? Outside, through sheets of rain, headlights appeared far down the road, approaching slowly, then stopping a distance away. Is that help? Blessing asked hopefully, straining to see through the fogged glass. Emeka squinted. I don't know. Nobody get out. Two figures stepped out of the distant vehicle, flashlights sweeping the road, moving with a caution that made the group's stomachs tighten. "Why are they just standing there?" Chidinma whispered. "Why aren't they coming closer?" Uzo's voice was barely audible. "I don't like this." The flashlights swept closer, and the figures began walking toward the stalled car at an unhurried, deliberate pace. "Lock the doors," Emeka said sharply. Chidinma fumbled for the lock, hands shaking. "It's already locked! It's already locked!" The figures stopped a few feet from the car, flashlights raised, faces obscured by rain and shadow, and the group's own mounting fear. "What do they want?" Blessing whispered, gripping Uzo's arm. Nobody answered. Nobody had an answer to give. One of the figures rapped a knuckle against the driver's window. Emeka froze, hand hovering uselessly over the ignition. "Emeka!" Chidinma hissed. "Do something!" "Do what?" he shot back, voice cracking. "What exactly do you want me to do?" The knock came again, harder this time. Blessing began to cry quietly. Uzo's breathing turned shallow and fast. In the back seat, Maria closed her eyes, her hands trembling as much as anyone's, folded together in her lap. She had never been more afraid in her life. But beneath the fear, something steadier began to rise. Quiet, familiar, worn smooth by years of practice. "Lord," she whispered, voice shaking but audible in the small, terrified car, "please protect us. Please don't let anything happen to any of us tonight." Chidinma turned, startled. "Maria, now is not the time. Let her," Uzo said suddenly, his voice cutting through, surprising even himself. Maria kept praying, louder now, not performing, not proving anything, simply reaching for the only thing that felt solid in a car full of fear. "Please send help. Please let whoever is outside mean us no harm. Please, God, don't let this be how it ends for any of us." Emeka's hands trembled on the wheel. For the first time in 3 years, he did not have a rebuttal, a counterpoint, an argument ready. The figure outside the window straightened suddenly, turning his head sharply toward the road behind them, where new headlights had appeared. A truck rumbled into view, slowing as it approached, a spotlight sweeping across the stalled car and the two figures beside it. The two men outside exchanged a quick word, then turned and walked briskly back toward their own vehicle, disappearing into the rain. The truck pulled to a stop instead, and a man climbed out, waving a flashlight, calling out to ask if they were all right. He introduced himself as a local mechanic driving home late, explained he'd seen the stalled car and stopped without a second thought. Within the hour, he'd coaxed the engine back to life, refusing payment, wishing them a safer rest of their journey before disappearing back into the night. The 5 of them sat in stunned silence long after his taillights vanished, the rain now softening to a gentle patter on the roof. Nobody spoke for a long moment. The weight of what had almost happened, and what had happened instead, pressed heavy in the small space. Chidinma broke the silence first, her voice small, stripped of its usual confidence. "Maria, what exactly were you praying?" Maria wiped her eyes, still trembling. "Just for us to be safe. That's all I know how to do when I'm scared." "That's it?" Emeka asked quietly, staring straight ahead. "Just asking? Just asking," Maria repeated softly. "I don't have all the answers. I just believe I'm heard." The rest of the drive passed in near silence, the playlist forgotten, the earlier jokes nowhere to be found. Chidinma stared out the window for a long while before speaking again. "I've mocked you for 3 years and you prayed for me anyway." Maria didn't answer right away. "I wasn't praying to prove anything. I was just scared, and it's what I know." "I recorded you eating," Chidinma said quietly, shame creeping into her voice. "I made fun of you in front of strangers. Why do you still—" "Because you're my friend," Maria said simply. "That didn't stop being true just because you laughed at me sometimes." Emeka finally spoke, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "I still don't understand it, the praying, any of it, but I saw what happened back there." "I'm not asking you to understand it," Maria said. "I never was." Emeka nodded slowly, quiet for once, turning the moment over in his mind. Uzo spoke up from the front seat, voice unsteady. I never thought the jokes were funny, not once, I just never said anything. Why not? Maria asked, not with anger, just tired curiosity. I don't know, Uzo admitted. Cowardice maybe, I'm sorry, Maria, truly. Blessing, silent for most of the ride, finally found her own voice for the first time in years. I'm sorry too, I never once told Chidinma to stop. Chidinma turned to look at Blessing, something shifting between them, an old dynamic quietly cracking open. Maria reached forward and squeezed Chidinma's shoulder gently. I forgave you a long time ago. I just needed you to see it too. The resort town came into view an hour later, lights glimmering over the lake, the earlier terror slowly giving way to something like relief. They checked into their lodge in near silence, the trip's earlier excitement replaced by a quieter, more reflective mood among all five of them. That night Chidinma knocked softly on Maria's door, sitting at the edge of her bed long after the others had gone to sleep. Will you tell me more? Chidinma asked quietly. Not to convert me or whatever, I just want to understand what I've been mocking. Maria smiled, warm and unguarded for the first time in weeks. I'd like that. No pressure though, just conversation. They talked long into the night, not about doctrine or arguments, but about fear, comfort, and the quiet strength Maria had carried alone for years. By morning, something between them had shifted permanently, the old mockery replaced by a fragile growing respect neither of them rushed to name. The remaining days at the resort passed gently, the group swimming, cooking together, laughing in ways that felt lighter than they had in months. Emeka, still unconvinced by faith itself, nonetheless found himself asking Maria genuine questions instead of pointed ones, listening more than he argued. I still think I need evidence, he told her one evening by the lake, but I saw something back there I can't fully explain away. You don't have to explain it, Maria said. Just don't mock what you haven't tried to understand. That's all I ever wanted. Uzo apologized once more before they packed to leave, this time without prompting, simply because the guilt had sat too heavy to carry quietly. Blessing, for the first time since anyone could remember, initiated a conversation of her own, asking Maria what her favorite verse was and why. The drive home was unlike the drive there, quieter, gentler, filled with the comfort that hadn't existed among them in a long time. Back on campus, the final weeks of the semester unfolded differently for the group, the old jokes about Maria's faith nowhere to be found. Chidinma in particular changed in small visible ways, deleting the old cafeteria video without a word, quietly, on her own. One afternoon, a younger student in their faculty made a passing joke about someone's visible faith, expecting the usual easy laughter. Chidinma's face hardened. Don't do that, she said simply, firmly, surprising even herself with the protectiveness in her voice. The younger student blinked, confused by the sudden shift, unaware of the journey that had led to that single quiet correction. Emeka, still the group's resident skeptic, began attending a philosophy discussion group that debated faith and reason with genuine curiosity rather than mockery. He never converted, never claimed to, but the condescension that once colored his arguments had softened into something closer to respect. Uzo made a quiet habit of checking in on Maria the way she had always checked in on everyone else, without being asked, without expecting thanks. Blessing and Maria grew close in a way nobody could have predicted a year earlier, bonding over long conversations neither had expected to have. Graduation approached quickly, the final weeks a blur of exams, farewells, and the particular ache of a chapter closing before anyone felt ready. The night before their final exams, the group gathered one last time in the hostel common room, exhausted, sentimental, unusually quiet. Someone ordered food, and plates were passed around the small circle, the room settling into a familiar, comfortable hush. Maria bowed her head, out of habit, to say a quiet prayer over her plate before eating, the way she had every single day for 3 years. The room did not laugh. Nobody reached for their phone. Nobody mimicked her voice or waited to land a joke at her expense. Instead, Chidinma gently reached over and put a hand up toward a friend who'd started to speak loudly, murmuring, "Wait, let her finish." The room fell into an easy, respectful silence until Maria lifted her head again, opening her eyes to find 5 faces waiting warmly, not mockingly. "Thank you," Maria said softly, more to the room than to any one person, gratitude and quiet disbelief mingling in her voice. "For what?" Chidinma asked, though something in her tone suggested she already understood the answer. "For finally seeing me," Maria said simply, and nobody needed her to explain further. Graduation day arrived bright and full of noise, families crowding the auditorium, 5 friends finding each other in the sea of gowns and caps. Chidinma pulled Maria into a tight hug before the ceremony began, whispering an apology that needed no further words. Emeka shook Maria's hand solemnly, then, on impulse, pulled her into an awkward, sincere hug of his own. Uzo simply smiled at her, the quiet kind of smile that said everything the words never quite managed to. Blessing linked arms with Maria as they walked toward their seats, no longer trailing behind Chidinma's shadow but standing fully in her own. As names were called across the stage one by one, the 5 friends cheered loudest for each other, the old distance fully closed. That evening, at a small celebratory dinner, Chidinma raised a toast, her voice thick with an emotion she rarely let show. "To Maria," she said, lifting her glass, "who never once stopped being kind to people who didn't deserve it." The others raised their glasses too, murmuring agreement, the years of mockery folding quietly into a memory none of them were proud of, but all of them had learned from. Maria smiled, humbled, uncertain what to say, settling instead for a simple, "Thank you, all of you." In the years that followed, the 5 friends scattered across different cities, different careers, different lives, but the bond forged that stormy night never fully faded. Chidinma, now working in a demanding corporate job, found herself returning to quiet reflection during her hardest weeks, remembering the calm she'd witnessed in that car. She never took up the exact same faith, but she stopped mocking what she didn't understand, and started extending the grace she'd once been shown. Emeka went on to study further, his skepticism intact but softened, his arguments now built on curiosity rather than contempt. He kept in touch with Maria over the years, occasionally messaging her with a genuine question, never again with a mocking one. Uzo became known among his own new friends as someone who spoke up when jokes crossed a line, a habit born directly from a regret he never forgot. Blessing, having found her own voice at last, went on to mentor younger students, teaching them the quiet courage of speaking up for others. Maria continued exactly as she always had, quiet, steady, unwavering, never needing the world's validation to keep believing what she believed. She never told the story of that stormy night as a triumph over her friends, only ever as a night she'd been afraid and hadn't been alone. Years later, at a reunion none of them had missed, the 5 friends sat together again, older now, softer around the edges. Someone brought up the old cafeteria video joke, and this time the laughter that followed carried warmth instead of cruelty. "We were terrible to you," Chidinma admitted, shaking her head at the memory. "I don't know how you put up with us." "You are my friends," Maria said simply, the same answer she'd given years before, still true, still enough. As dinner wound down, Maria bowed her head once more, out of the same quiet habit that had once drawn mockery, and now drew nothing but respect. The table fell into its familiar, comfortable silence. 5 friends bound not by belief, but by everything they'd survived together. Nobody could have guessed, on that humiliating night at the party 3 years earlier, that the mockery would one day become the very thing that taught them how to love each other properly. What began as a joke at Maria's expense ended as the quiet lesson that shaped every one of them, that faith, kindness, and patience, given without condition, rarely go unanswered forever.